start, even though we're missing a few group members here. Thank you all for coming for our second meeting of the Acreage Community Focus Group. I guess go ahead, let's get started with a Pledge of Allegiance. Get that out of the way.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, there's a reason for that in elementary school. I just couldn't figure it out. Now we know. Mr. Mickey, join us. Okay, let's go ahead and get started with just the group. Any general comments everybody wants to make? Yeah, we can. Well, obviously we're missing a few folks, and we have a new young lady on the group. Stephanie is joining us. I guess Steph, if you want to just take a couple minutes and just introduce yourself and get the microphone so you can yeah. We got to make sure we speak into that mic for those of you who are down in front and don't have a mic.
Hi, good evening. My name is Stephanie Tuskwitz. I'm an Acreage resident, mother of 2 young boys, and a registered nurse.
Great. Thanks, Steph. Anyone? Anybody have any opening comments you guys want to bring up?
Myself, I guess, last meeting.
Okay.
I'm Leanne Reed. I'm mother of a little girl. I'm president of the Moms Club and just very active in the community.
Great. Thanks for joining us. Anyone else?
Diana, this last meeting, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Diana Demarest. I lived in the Acreage since 2003. I have a teenage daughter, and I run a web business.
Great. Thank you. Okay. We've got a pretty busy schedule here tonight, and we want to try to get through this in a couple of hours. So, first thing on the agenda is last time we were all together, we went over a draft copy of our mission statement, and based on a handful of recommendations by the group, made some changes to it, primarily the final statement at the bottom. So if we want to, we can real quickly run through this again. We can just run through the changes, and if everyone's okay with it, we'll go ahead and finalize it and get it pushed on out to everybody.
I still have a comment.
Okay.
Just speak into your microphone.
The paragraph where you speak about the potential determination of the cancer cluster root cause.
Yes.
The way I understand it, the health department is still conducting phase 2 of their cancer cluster study, which will determine whether or not we actually have a cancer cluster. So, back to the initial, comments of the last meeting. If there is no cancer cluster, this is not going to work either. Potential determination of the root cause.
Are they determining whether it's a cancer cluster, or are they determining whether or not there's a cause for the cancer cluster?
That's a question I would like to ask the health department. So.
All right, we can talk about that a little bit later. I think they've already declared there is a cluster, correct?
No.
No.
It's my understanding that they said that there's an elevated amount. Now, whether that translates into the word cluster or not, I don't know, but it's still an elevated amount.
According to Alina Alonso, according to her statement by statistics, we are cancer clusters.
And the CDC, I believe?
And the CDC also sent a letter to that effect, yes.
Right.
I had this conversation this evening with Mr. O'Connor, who's here in the room, to specifically ask that because it's a topic that I've heard all week long.
Yeah.
And it is a cancer cluster in the sense of statistics, but it hasn't been declared. He said a declaration.
Well, the CDC letter I saw said that, yeah, you have one, so I'll
Which prompted Alonso to then verbalize
just
it.
say what she said.
All right.
If I can pose a question here, does it matter?
Yeah.
I guess I'm saying is if it's elevated and we know it to be elevated.
There's an old saying that perception is everything, even if it's wrong. And the whole world believes we got a cancer cluster because of the press. So like it or not, we've got one. Even if we don't
The
do
world
it.
believes that we have a cancer cluster because we have 13 children. That's why they believe, it's not just a statement. There are
an expert here that can speak on that with some authority?
Sure.
From DEP or FDOH or something?
We can get to that, I guess.
If that's
That's
still,
you guys want to? Sure, we can
really relates to
address it now if you want to. who's, I guess, Tim, who would
Mr.
you
Tim
recommend?
O'Connor.
Who would you recommend speaking on behalf of that question that the group? Well, the question is has officially a cluster been designated in this area? And what is your definition? It's a great question. You got it.
The primary thing here is the definition.
Yeah.
And what
Microphone.
you need a microphone.
This is Mr. Tim O'Connor with Palm Beach County Health Department.
I don't, oops. Got buttons on both sides. I don't want to purport that I'm an expert on this. The only thing that we can say is we were asked to look at, through Department of Health, the potential of elevated rates of cancer in the area, in the acreage, which is still under study by, doing the water testing, the environmental testing that's associated with it. The statement made by Dr. Alonso in the quotes in February was that the elevated levels, by definition of being a specific disease in a specific location among a specific age group, can constitute or does constitute a cluster. So it is a clustering of pediatric brain cancers that were found in that time frame from 1994, and now we've even added through 2008. So it meets the case definition of cancer cluster, and the CDC reviewed all of the data that was presented and concurred with the elevated rates, and that it met the definition. So that's really what it is. There is no declaration. There's a lot of discussion whether there's been a declaratory statement written and issued, and that is not the case. We don't have that or anything to be able to do that at this time. So
Somebody have that on.
Through the chair. Guys, let's be kind to Andrew because he's new to chair. You got to go through him to be recognized. And I'm sorry, I'm used to doing this. But we're being filmed, so this way everybody's heard and seen. Let me just ask you then, is there a legal instrument filed in the court or wherever it is that you filed this type of instrument declaring the acreage a cancer cluster?
no.
Okay, so then and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, just for clarification then, but by statistics and that particular disease, there is a cluster of female pediatric brain tumors.
Well,
et cetera,
mostly
et cetera.
female, but pediatric brain cancers, that's correct. That by definition constitutes the cluster or grouping.
There was a letter that was sent out today from the EPA to Senator Bill Nelson that still identifies it as a potential cancer cluster. I didn't bring it with me, but I came an email today.
Well, there is a letter that we posted, took us a little bit of time to find it, from the EPA that was actually written to Senator Nelson last summer. And that could be what you're referring to, but it is on the website, posted on the Health Department's website, and you can download it at any time.
Stephanie.
No, I was just going to say it was June or July 2009, because I looked at that too and went, huh? So, yeah.
Well, to that point, the only thing definitive that I know of that I can point to is this letter to Sharon Watkins dated January 8, 2010 from Michael Ian, PhD. That's the only thing that I know of because it's a follow-up to the phase 1 study. And what it says is that the issue is the population. And he mentions in his letter that the population methods that were used by the Palm Beach County Health Department, there were 3 different methods, the validity of which, quotes, cannot be verified. So I don't think any way you read that, if it can't be verified, then we don't have a population estimate that's valid. And if it's not valid, then you cannot determine whether or not you have a cluster because it's based upon population, is it not?
We can, yeah, probably have to, excuse me, is table this for another discussion. In in the near future here, we're going to have some guests come to speak to us about how this investigation from statistically has gone about. And at that point, we can bring up some questions and comments. Go ahead.
I think it should be duly noted, though, that the press hear that there is not a cancer cluster.
An official declaration.
Official declaration of a cancer cluster. And that should be put out right now.
There are two different things. There's not a legal declaration of a cancer cluster,
Well,
but there statistically is a cancer cluster in female pediatrics. There are two different things, but it's something that we need to recognize and explore.
exactly.
Real quickly.
Chair.
Yes, sir.
First of all, let me introduce, this is our District 6 County Commissioner, Jessica Newman.
I would volunteer to allocate a full-page announcement by this focus group. What our view is the status of this supposed cancer cluster, to kind of give what is the consensus of this group on what we understand is the current status. So I will volunteer a full-page announcement after the conclusion of this meeting. So again, to try to minimize the confusion and all of this multiple
That'd be great.
interpretations.
Yeah.
So wait a minute, what are you saying? You want what?
I will volunteer to provide a full-page announcement in the town crier, which I guess is the local paper, or even the Palm School Post neighborhood. I guess one or the other, or both. Again, to clarify to the public and try to see if we can cut down all of these different versions.
That'd be fantastic.
I think it's a great idea, Commissioner. However, I think we ought to wait till the soil tests are back first. I mean, we have the water tests back and they came in inconclusive. So if once we have the soil tests back, and it's my understanding that'll be probably a couple weeks, 10 days, I don't know. But I think then that would be a great idea. Now, if something comes up in our soil tests, then we've got a different matter. So
the other thing that whatever the group decides in the proper time, but also after we agree on what's going to be included in the announcement, I'd like to have the health department review it so that their version is kind of parallel with our version of what the current status is.
That would be great. Stephanie, you can come.
And I appreciate the offer for doing that and looking at the consensus for that. I think though right now, even amongst our group, we have mixed consensus as to looking at that definition. So probably once we can have somebody who can give more clarity, because I also have a letter from Dr. Watkins that I've received where it talks about where we live, where my home is, and yes, the finding support that a cluster has been identified for the area in which I live. So I think that if we can get someone who can come in and speak to the group and get that clarity given before, because I know I would not feel comfortable with being a member or an alternate of the group and then being part of a statement that went out when I don't totally understand it, and it seems that the definition is being given one way, but then they're saying there's not a declaration. So I'm at this point a little confused with that myself.
Right. Tracy.
I have a letter from the National Center of Environmental Health. Yes, I have a letter from the National Center of Environmental Health dated January 8, 2010, which reviews, his name is Michael McGeehan, and what is his title? He is the Director, Division of Environmental Hazards and Effects, and he states that that the population was done 3 different ways. Estimating population changes over a 7-year period. They've taken all of that into considerations. Methods 2 and 3 result in similar estimates as 1 did. And hold on 1 second. The main conclusion is that, it was done properly, that the population. We've done it 3 times. How many times you gotta do it? It is what it is.
Well, let's not get too buried in this. I know we just want to go out of here. Let's go ahead and
Something related to that, on that.
real quick.
Any kind of letters that we have from Sharon Watkins, from any official in the state, I'd like to have a copy of. I think we should all have a copy. I've never heard of this letter you're talking about.
But it was passed out last
The
week.
one you just mentioned,
Okay.
yeah, but
The one I got was
the one you,
through
is
the,
that
it was,
personal
yeah, I got
letter to
it
you?
through the Palm Beach County Department of Health, the legal department. They provided it to me.
I just wanted to comment on the ad, and I agree with Stephanie. We do not have a consensus, and then before any ad would go out that's got all our names attached to it, we should all have the opportunity to review it. It's a very fine job. Commissioner Sam Marie offered to do it.
Yes, no, absolutely. Everyone would have the opportunity to review it and provide input.
My question regarding this issue would be, do we need that terminology used or officially recognized to continue to get the support from government to try to do the particular determinations that we need to try to find out what the cause may be for these children? And if not, we ought to look at trying to get away from it from the standpoint as oppressed, bashing the community. If it's a legal term we need, then okay, let's consider it. But otherwise, it's a horrible term.
I think, yeah, we haven't tried to cover that at all costs.
From a public standpoint, and the media is killing us.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. I have a question from Tim O'Connor that I'd like clarified, if you would mind.
Sure, Tim.
Tim,
Question.
Tim, is there any such thing as a legal declaration that's filed with the court? Or is there any such thing as a quote-unquote legal document that's filed with anybody that actually says, yes, you are a cluster, or is it the way that it's determined and defined, the way they did it with us, is that the way it's normally done, and is that the way it's done based on CDC guidelines?
What has occurred was based on CDC guidelines, and that's the way it is done.
Is there ever such a document filed with the court?
The only time, if there's that I know of, if there's an imminent public health threat, the director of the health department, in conjunction with this, in this case, the state surgeon general, could issue a declaration in the interest of the safety of the people. That, you know, this area or that it exists. We don't have any evidence of that at this time.
Right.
And so that's why there is no declaration been issued. It's just the study and the finding of a clustering of cancers among children in this area.
And the phase 2, because some of my questions relate to a cancer cluster expert, I guess that we're going to see at some point. The epidemiologist, I would assume.
I'm sure Dr. Watkins will be happy.
Because some of that is going to be background information about prior areas of residence, other, you know, genetics type stuff. And I think some of that information may be applicable to whether or not there really is a cluster that's related to the location rather than, and that's, I think those questions need to be reserved. I'm not talking about a legal document. I assumed when phase 2 study was complete that there would be some sort of a determination whether or not the specific area, the boundaries of the cancer cluster map, study area, might be eliminated.
Okay, Chair, let's, ma'am, now, we can't right now, we cannot have comments from the audience. There are comment cards, if you want to fill one out and turn a comment.
So you can't address what you just said about the cancer
This
cluster?
time, no, ma'am. No, ma'am.
But if the bank has
chair,
said
ma'am.
that you have to tell people
Ma'am.
before you can sell your house that it's a cancer cluster, how can you say that it doesn't matter making a declaration?
And go ahead and fill out the card, and we'll definitely address
But
it.
if you don't address when it goes on,
All right, so back to the group, the mission
Make any
statement.
sense?
Yes.
I'm sorry, and I promise I'll do my last one. Just something what Mr. O'Connor said, can I just ask him just to give a clarification on one thing, that when you're talking about the ability for the director or our state surgeon general to do that type of a declaration. What does that mean, though? Is that a declaration in terms of this area you live in is a disaster zone and we need to move you? Or is it on a smaller scale than that? Because if it's that, I think then we're looking at something that's very different than the definition of a cluster I think we're looking at right now.
Well, you know, I can't address that specifically, to be honest with you, because there's a whole lot of parameters that go into that. Let me try to relate something to you. Okay. 2001, we had the anthrax incident at the AMI building in Boca Raton. At that time, Dr. Malecki immediately issued the quarantine order and shut that building down in the interest of the public health and safety, because nobody knew what or whatever. That was not released for, I want to say, 3 years. 2006? Yeah, so it's 2001 through 2006. But, you know, again, that was an imminent public health threat. A lot of unknowns, a lot of variables, but the action was immediately taken based on the evidence that we had. So that's why, in this instance, for that to occur, you know, there's a lot of things would have to be looked at and or proven and, you know, again, pointed out. So.
Okay, great, Tim.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion. We accept the language here with one change. We remove the word cluster.
We can certainly do that. Does everyone second that motion?
No. Okay. How do we might be able to determine a cancer root cause? That's part of my question.
The motion does due to a lack of second.
I seconded it.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay. Then you can go into discussion.
I don't want to take too much time here. Got some presenters that we need to get to here.
I mean, if we're debating the whole idea of that word, let's just drop it for now. And it's whether it's a cluster or not. The issue is there a cancer issue? When you look at the population, when you look at all of the issues together, and that's what we're here to find out. So I think the wording we've got here, that should take that word out.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
What would satisfy you, sir? What would satisfy you that you would be willing to move forward and get on with the ability to find out what's going on and dropping this debate?
Well, this is the item that we have on discussion right now.
I guess my point is this. The ball's been thrown, you know, the ball's in play. Everybody knows the word cancer cluster. Okay, it doesn't matter whether you say it or not. If you go down to the office, the health department's running over there, they do a fantastic job of talking to people over there. But they don't use the word cancer cluster. The fact of the matter is we have a situation, the public thinks we have a situation, and I would like to get on with investigating that situation. So I don't think that we're affirming that there's a cancer cluster by this submission statement. I don't think that by taking it out we're going to be denying it. We're still facing the same problem. So I'm asking you, what would it take? What is it that you would think would be the appropriate thing here?
You asked me, and I told you, let's take the word out.
Through the chair.
So if we put elevated cancer frequency in the acreage?
How about just cancer concerns?
There's an elevated cancer frequency. Okay, there's an elevated frequency.
Let's
put that in there.
All right, let's
Lipstick on a pig is still a pig.
Through the chair. Through the chair.
Let's go ahead and table this one for a little bit longer. Obviously, we've got some opinion and we can work on this. Go ahead.
I actually think the mission statement is very important. And I think if everybody doesn't try to come to some agreement on it, how do you move forward with that mission? And I think it's very important to the validity of the group. I think there could be language here that everybody could agree on. I think the fact that the word says potential determination of the cancer cluster root cause, potential really clarifies cancer cluster, and it's saying potential to the cause and it's saying potential to the cancer cluster. It's kind of there and it should balance that out with everybody else. I think the mission statement is very important. I also think it's very important for the group to try to go through the chair. Because we are being, thank you to Palm Beach County, we are being televised for the community to interact, or to watch us interact and ask questions. So for the sake of being a good group and a respectable group, please try to be recognized to the chair. And I know sometimes you get passionate, so we do that ourselves, but I just wanted to say that. But I do think the mission statement is very important. And I think if we just each went down the line, maybe somebody could say in that particular sentence, this is the word I would like to see written, and maybe we can draw a consensus that way.
Mr. Chair, I have a question about the mission statement, actually.
Yes, ma'am.
It reads, identification of the root issues associated with the initiation of the FDOH cancer cluster inquiry.
Yes.
Well, we know how it was initiated. The families asked for it. So why are we trying to identify the root issues? I mean, I think we know what the root issue was. The root issue was we had a bunch of sick kids. So, I mean, I think that's been identified already. We had a bunch of sick kids. We had commonality in where we lived. And so we went to the Florida Department of Health and said, hey, take a look at this. And that's how the inquiry got started.
I think there's some questions about the data that was used in coming up with that.
Can you give me an example, please?
Population. Transient population. That's a big one. So I think this group wants to dig a little bit deeper into exactly how the determination by the health department was formulated. Do we feel there's
okay, I mean, that's fine, but that's
missing?
not what that mission statement says.
We can reword it, but that's the intent. And then obviously the second part, formulation of appropriate recommendations to work with them. Hey,
Oh, no, I have no problem. It's just the first part of the sentence I had a question about. Because, like I said, to me it seems that we already know what the root issue was and how we got here. Now, if we're going to question how they got there, that's a different question entirely.
Right.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
I just have a suggestion because I think part of our real role here is to get answers to the questions that are being asked, not only by us, but by the community. So if we just, I think where my concern was that we're trying to get to a determination of the cancer cluster root cause. That's not really what we're trying to do. We're trying to receive information because of the potential determination of the cancer cluster. And we want to get information from the health department and the DEP and from whatever other experts that we may glean some information from, as well as find out some things that maybe people can do to protect themselves.
Yeah, let's just, I'll tell you what, let's just stop the results.
Yeah.
Yeah, working towards determination of cancer cluster.
Period.
Boom.
Because whether it's statistic.
Read that back again. I'm not following.
Go ahead, Michelle.
All right. In that last sentence we're looking at, because whether it's statistical or declared, it's all the same if we're working toward the determination. Working towards, drop a potential, just working towards determination of the cancer cluster, period. And take out root cause. Because whether it's statistic or whether it's declared, we're working towards the determination of that.
Okay.
That seems reasonable?
It should satisfy everyone. Mr. O'Connor said it best. He said, whether it's statistic that caused the determination of the cancer cluster or whether it's an actual declaration, it's still investigating the cancer cluster and coming up with a determination. Does that satisfy everybody? And then you just need to work on the introductory language to the last bold sentence.
Right. Diana, have any suggestions there?
Well, I mean, if the question is how did the department determine that, then I would just say that. Identification of how the Department of Health, or identification of how the Department of Health determined that we are a cancer cluster. I mean, if that's really what the question is, then that's what we should say.
You can go right back to dropping that out and going identification of the initiation of the FDOH.
Oh, say,
Acreage
okay, so
cluster.
we're crossing.
Just cross that out.
Just
Again.
cross the last sentence out
Yeah.
completely.
Something I'm learning in life is sometimes
Definition of the root issues, to get rid of the root
get
issues
rid of it,
associated.
yeah. And just put identification of the initiation of the FDOH Acreage Cancer Cluster Inquiry and formulation of appropriate recommendations for resolving these issues.
Genericize it some more, and I think that was Bill's initial put at the last meeting, just make it very generic. Seem reasonable? All right. Okay, well, let's, I guess I'll do a motion to accept this mission statement.
Actually, you have a motion on the table from Mike and second by Carl. If they want to amend their motion.
Yeah, I'd like to amend the motion, as you just stated.
Okay. Carl, do you agree with that?
Second.
All right, then go ahead. Take a vote.
All right.
All right, so what's the new motion?
Do you want me to go ahead and just read it for the record?
Yes,
So
yes,
everybody
please.
knows, so everybody agrees. Mission statement. The Acreage Community Focus Group, ACFG, consists of local government leaders, working professionals, and full-time Acreage residents who have been assembled to provide the following support for the ongoing community cancer cluster investigation. Represent Acreage residents in direct communication with local, state, and federal government agencies, leading the investigation, and to act as liaison between the community and investigation teams. Update the Acreage community with status reports on the progress of the investigation. Team with the government agencies actively performing the investigation to provide timely interactive review and recommendations of the investigation plan, methods, progression, and results, working towards determination of the cancer cluster. The ACFG must provide neutral, unbiased review and recommendations to the government agencies from a community perspective. The ACFG will not be responsible for execution of the identified action items of the investigation. The ACFG will review the results and conclusions of the action items for satisfaction of completion from the Acreage community perspective. All ACFG team members must work together as a team with the government agencies towards a common goal, regardless of personal motivation. Identification of the initiation of the FDOH Acreage Cancer Cluster Inquiry and formulation of appropriate recommendations for resolving these issues. And of course, the FDOH is a Florida department.
Okay. Yep, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, motion passed. So we'll finalize this. We'll make it official here. Okay. That's done. Not too bad. 40 minutes. All right. Let's go ahead and get on Mr. Bill out. Bill is a senior scientist from the Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry from Florida Atlantic University. And he is going to make a presentation on radioactivity in waters and aquifer rocks of the central western communities. The group, you guys have a copy of Dr. Waters' presentation, so we'll have it here on the screen for the rest of the community.
I have a slide rule to know how to use it.
Just leave it on that screen there, Bill.
Let's see it. Okay, now we're going to need a real mouse. There we go. Okay. Okay. I don't really need a microphone. I'm used to talking.
For the purpose of the recording,
Oh,
we would
okay.
suggest it.
All right. Hello?
Turn it on, the little button.
Okay.
There you go.
Anyway, hello. Is that on?
Okay, this is.
I'm Bill Lauda. I'm a neighbor of the Acreage. I live down in Loxahatchee Groves on E Road. E, not 148. I got interested in this primarily because my straw is in the same puddle. We share the same aquifer. Okay. One of the biggest things that came out data-wise is
Excuse
that...
me, Bill. Do you mind just taking a step that way because the microphone is picking you up twice?
Close to that mic.
Yeah.
You're feeding back, buddy.
Oh, I'm feeding back. Okay.
There you go.
Okay. So then I got double interested in this because I had a undergraduate student in the chemistry department. You have to do a directed independent study. He came to me and says, I'm interested in the cancer, I call it a phenomenon. In the...
Sit back.
in the acreage. And so he came out and we started doing some Geiger counter readings around water treatment systems. And then we saw DEP's data. And tonight I'll show you some data that Mr. Rob Siegel of Green E&E LLC gave me, which is really good data. This helps a lot. Now I put up here no answers on cancer per se. That actually might be incorrect because radium is linked to bone cancer and its main degradation product, radon, is linked to lung cancer. So there is, my main interest here is clicking off one potential problem. Okay, whether it's a problem with the pediatric brain cancers, I doubt, but it could be with other things. So there are some elevated radon out here. And
so just to be clear, you're going to be discussing the radiation content in the water based on your,
right.
That's strictly it. You're not going to discuss any other contaminants, only radiation.
No. Just radiation and what's called the transuranic series, everything coming from uranium-238 primarily. Okay, scientific method, we make observations, make a hypothesis, gather data, come up with a theory, test the theory. Okay, observations 1, some wells have elevated radium, 226 and 228. And obviously some radon too, because that's the next step in this breakdown product. And some of it was starting to show up in the shallow wells versus the deeper wells. This is not a blanket statement for the whole area. This is just a few observations, and we'll see how we can get to hopefully doing something. This is my student Josef Newman did a cursory radioactive survey of water treatment systems only. This is external radiation coming out of the water treatment systems at around 19 homes, and what we found matches exactly what the DEP was reporting. That there was higher radiation being emitted from the carbon filters, some from the water softeners. The water softeners make perfect sense because radium is in the same group 2 in the periodic table as calcium and magnesium. Your softener is meant to take out hardness. Radium is in the same group. Okay. The carbon filters, the highest gamma readings were there. The carbon filters are meant to take out organic matter. Radon is called lipophilic. It loves fats. Okay, so it will go in and be absorbed by the organic matter. Also, any of the breakdown products that precipitate, form some other complex little particles, will be trapped in the carbon filter. Okay, because once you get to radon, 3.8 days later, it starts breaking down. 55 minutes later, it's gone all the way to lead. Okay, so once you get to radon, you got a very fast breakdown. Most of the stuff that we looked at was slightly elevated, 100 to 160 counts per minute of gamma, which is about 2 to 2.5 times above background. You'll get about that from your granite countertops. Okay, nothing really to worry about. There was some very highly elevated, well, not really highly elevated, but enough, 800 counts per minute, which still came out to within about 1/3, I think, of the NIOSH and OSHA recommended maximum for an 8-hour day worker exposure. So this is stuff that's not burning your skin off. It's not that high. It's elevated, but it's not ridiculously elevated. And some ancillary data came around from USGS. I've been in contact with my colleagues at USGS, and they've become very interested in this. And then I've also spoken to some local drillers, that when they're drilling the wells, they come up with this very, very, I didn't have enough berries, but with a very, very fine black powder, like they call it sand. It's not really sand, because sand's a particle size. That's being brought up with some of these shallow wells. Okay. This makes sense that it's also getting trapped in the carbon filter, because it's so fine that it's making it through the particulate filter. It's meant to take out real sand. Okay. And they've said that this is probably the phosphatic sands that they ran into in other places. There's one well they drilled many years ago, a few years ago, at the corner of State Road 7 and State Road 80, Palm Beach well 1806, that they take the natural gamma reading as they do the well logging, and down hole, it goes, this counts per second now. 20, 30, 20, 30, 260, 20, 30, 20, 30. 48 feet, there's a layer of this type of material. And phosphates, everybody hopefully has heard that Florida supplies most of the phosphates for fertilizers over around the Bartow area, Polk County, Bone Valley. they co-precipitate uranium. They have a lot of trouble getting rid of their tailings for the phosphate industry. So this is primarily where this may be coming from. Okay, this is super technical. This is how it forms. Bring up nutrients from the bottom of the ocean. You have a big algal bloom. The organic matter drops down. And organic matter, well, your DNA is loaded with phosphate. This is holding the whole thing together. Okay, so all the organic matter breaks down in a specific environment, and all this phosphate turns into phosphorite, which is an inorganic thing, and it co-precipitates uranium out of seawater. There's about 150 parts per billion of uranium in normal seawater, okay, as a carbonate. Anyway, so it gets co-precipitated down. Okay, you're sort of there about 1.8 million years ago, somewhere around there. This is the Tamiami subsea, about in the late Pliocene area. But the next one will be the tail. This one here, this is what Florida looked like from the Challenger 1.8 million years ago, if we had the Challenger up. Some colleagues of mine at FAU, Doctors Ed Patuk and Charles Roberts, have a book out on this. Do this. Okay, right over in here is Tampa, St. Pete area, and the phosphate deposits in Polk County. You can see the way this fan forms. There is obviously a current running through here. It's not at all unlikely that the phosphates over here, with their co-precipitated uranium, came over and dropped out when it got to the quiet area in the so-called Waxahachie Trough. Back, where's the names? There's the names. Anyway, so somewhere up in here this is where Okeechobee formed, and we're over in here somewhere. Okay, so this is the data that Mr. Siegel gave me. This is fantastic data for looking at it. This is a plot of radium-226 concentration, okay, here, versus the well depth. Normally I plot it the other way. Anyway, if you look somewhere right in here, about 55, 58 feet, there's no more high radium. Okay, it seems to be in the shallow wells primarily. So about 1 out of 5 wells over here, 21%, are above 5 picopurities per liter out of these 74 samples. This is just 74 samples for out here. I don't have any geographic areas for this, because Mr. Siegel was very good to his clients. He had the full data sheet. He cut off the left-hand side of the sheet that identified where these came from. So he's following HIPAA regulations very well. He only gave me the raw data. Well depths, radium. Okay. This I showed to my colleagues at USGS, and they got very, very interested in doing this because this, with the recent geology in the area, says that we probably have this phosphorite layer out here somewhere. But you got to remember, geology is not like the pages of a book. It's not laid down flat, 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 flat. It's undulating. There's rivers and pockets and fingers. So if this data and data like it could be plotted on latitude and longitude horizontally, we can start to see, is there fingers of this through here? So I've contacted them. The USGS has a co-op program that they do a cost-sharing thing. So I've already had a meeting with Commissioner Santa Maria to initiate looking for funds to do this. It would be around $200,000 would be the full project to get 12 to 18 holes bored down here. Now these are not just wells like you drill a well. This is taking a big bore and bringing up at least a 2 to 4 inch slug, okay, of core recovery, so you can do the real geology. And if it's done correctly, plotted throughout the area, then we get an idea of where the good water is and the more the higher level water. So the goal of this whole thing would be to remove radium and radon as even potential bad actors in our lives. Just check it off. Okay, we've got good systems. Okay, beyond doing something like this, one of the most simple things that a person can do is spend $40 or $80 a year. 40 if you only want the water coming out of your tap tested, or 80 for raw water plus what's coming out of your tap and have your total alpha radiation looked at. If it's higher, then dig deeper. But it's a relatively inexpensive test to have your total alpha radiation in the water tested. The other thing, maintain your water system. Okay. And what we've seen, the data inside and outside on anything that's looked at from the radioactive sequence, the water systems are doing their job. If they weren't doing their job, I wouldn't be able to get readings higher than background out of these water systems. Okay. So anyway, that's it. That's the whole point of how I got involved and what's going on here is that there is a difference in the aquifer. Somewhere around 50, 55, 60 foot, somewhere in there, there's a shift in the majority of water. However, if you look at some of those shallow wells, they have very, very low amounts of radium too. So it's not just one great big puddle down there. There's fingers and things that have to be laid out. So it's, I think it's probably time to do a little study at 200,000, where actually 100,000 would be the match, is a small thing to do. I don't get anything out of this. I want to get it started and go fishing. Because I study algal blooms. This is from an algal bloom, but it's a long time ago. I want to study the algal blooms that are right now. That's what I do in research. But anyway, I'll take any comments. Oh, one thing is National Geographic's latest issue just came out, water. That's the issue facing man in the 21st century. I had a stack of handouts on basic radiation information.
Put them over there, I think they're already gone. So.
Oh, okay. Anyway, if anybody needs any more of those, I've got a stack of business email you the PDF, and you can use your ink instead of mine and print it. Anyway, feel free to contact me at the university anytime you want to. I'll take questions now or whatever.
So we forwarded you, there was a list of questions the group put together. Did you have a chance to go through those?
Yes, I did, but I didn't bring my list, so we can run down.
We can hit them real quick. Vicki, you have a question? First one was, when performing your radiation survey, you indicated the discrepancy in the results appeared to point to geologic differences. Can you elaborate on this?
Yeah, well, that was the first part of that, was that we were finding people that knew they had shallow wells, and we'd find some that had elevated readings and some that had lower readings. But right away, that was telling me something's different down at the end of that pipe. So, yeah, basically, it was just ancillary, anecdotal data.
I pretty much eliminated the first three of my questions.
Okay, which ones do you think?
I just took 1, 2, 3 out.
Yeah, the fourth one, this might be a good one. For those who might be exposed to higher radiation levels other than drilling a deeper well, are there any other steps the homeowner might take to protect themselves and their family, i.e. aeration, moving water softener systems further away from the home, a type of shield for the systems, etc.?
Yeah, all those would work. I'm not in the in the water quality technology side of it, but a good water system. Now, if there is, if you are getting high radiation, radiation falls off with the inverse of the square of the distance. Okay, it's very fast because the source of radiation is a sphere. So the closer you are, the more you're picking up. As you go away, you're sampling a smaller and smaller piece of that arc. So distance is a biggie in decreasing released radiation. Right. Now, drinking something with radium, distance doesn't matter. You got to stop the radium from getting in there in the first place.
Did you do any surveys inside the homes?
Only when asked, and I didn't want to go into the homes. Looked at countertops mainly, because with the detector we were using, I was using a Ludlam-3 with an aluminum and a mica paddle, so I could differentiate between when I was reading gamma plus beta and gamma only. But when water's coming out of the tap, I'm not picking it up because most of it's quenched by being there. So it's very small amounts there. So I did not do any speciation. I looked only at gamma coming out. I was in one home that had a high reading on the outside in it, and it surprised me that about 20, somewhere around 18-19% of what was in the carbon filter actually came through the concrete wall, about 3 feet distance. So the concrete wall knocked it down considerably, but I still had that distance effect, and if that was just moved away from that wall, it would have, wouldn't get down. But shielding, absolutely. But the best thing is just, if you're really worried about it, find the best water, do well. Have a test done once or twice a year if you're really worried about it. $40 to test your total alpha is not, I mean, I usually spend more than that on a steak.
Who's doing that? Who's doing it for $40? Give me that guy's number.
Well, that's what I've been told. This is just for a total alpha.
Get another zero, Doc.
No, I think 400. That's you're getting into speciation of radium. I'm just talking about total alpha.
Oh,
okay. Because now, if the total alpha is elevated, then you want to get into looking more specifically.
Right. Yes, sir.
Hi, Dr. Love. I was wondering, with the research that you did on this project, or any reading that you've done afterwards, did you take a look at, or could you give us an idea as to the time frame it would take for the radium in the filters to then turn into radon?
Radium?
Yes.
Oh, I forgot the half-life of radium. I know it for radon.
Radium is 1,700 years, I think.
Radium-226, I've got it over there. It's years. But radon, once you've got radon, there was also radon in the water. That's 3.885 days. So once the radon is in the water, every 3.8 days, half of decaying. And then within 55 minutes, it undergoes 3 alphas and 2 betas to lead-210, something like that. So it's rapid from radon down.
And then is it turning into the radon daughters and turning into other possible contaminants or particulates?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Can you
For the sake of the recording, so everybody's heard, can we just keep it a little quieter in the back, please?
Yeah, that's why radon is such a bad actor when it's in the lungs. Okay, when you breathe it out of the gas. Okay, because if that radon stays in you and happens to hit its breakdown product, it only takes 55 minutes to undergo multiple decays and end up at lead-210, which hangs around for 22 years. That's why they build tables. You look this stuff up. But radium itself's got a pretty long half-life, into years. Okay. Uranium-238 years. I always thought that was interesting. It's the same age of the Earth, but so right now we've lost half our uranium-238 when the Earth was first formed. It's undergoing constant decay, and a half-life is half of it decays. So 38 days later, if you have a slug of radon and you're not adding any more, you just have that. 38 days later, it's 10 half-lives usually take something below detectable limits. Okay. So, but yes, as this stuff is in the system, anything that is undergoing radioactive decay does further decay. And just because it's there, it doesn't stop it. First order kinetics, it just keeps moving.
Carl. Mr. Lauder, correct me if I'm wrong, at the beginning of your presentation, you stated that radium-226 has little or nothing to do with pediatric cancers, correct?
That I've found.
Okay.
Now, I'm not an oncologist. I'm not that. I have, I've searched this on every search engine I can find, scientific search engines, even Google. And I've found no link that I can find with radium to any type of glioblastomas, any type of brain cancer at all. The only link in this whole thing, radium and radon, that I ever found was one study coming out of Germany that said that radon can cross the blood-brain barrier and may be linked to Alzheimer's.
And how much?
Yeah. I don't know.
Well, you know, a statement I would make, I mean, our focus here is on trying to find a determination of what's causing the pediatric cancer.
Right.
So, you know, I appreciate you doing the, if you want to continue doing the study and get funds to do the study. However, you know, cause cancer, pediatric cancers, you know, I don't know if we're going.
Oh no, I didn't. When we were corresponding, that's when I had that first slide. No answers per se.
Right.
That this probably has no relationship to pediatric brain cancer. However, there are people out here with liver and lung and bone. Okay. This may affect them.
But that isn't what we're trying to determine as a focus group. This is what we're trying to find out. Pediatric cancers and why we're in this whole mess.
Okay.
So
but I've got a theory on that, but I don't want to bring it forward here.
Tracy, go ahead.
A couple questions. Did you see a comparison with Loxahatchee Groves in comparison to the acreage? Do they have the same variables with peaks and valleys of well depths? Did you do the same sampling that you did in the acreage as you did to Loxahatchee Groves to see?
Okay, no, I only looked at 3 homes in Loxahatchee Groves, mine being one of them. Now, most people out here for water treatment have particulate filter, water softener, and an activated carbon and or green sand filter. I've got a water softener, period. And I'm gonna get my water tested for total alpha. But no, Loxahatchee Groves has not really been part of this, even though we're surrounded. There's been very little testing. I think Brian Juriel had his house tested independently, but I didn't see the data. But 18 years ago, we had 10 homes tested in the water, but we weren't looking for radioactivity or anything. And the only thing we ever found was an increasing salinity gradient going from the southeast to the northwest, which makes sense now that we know about the relic seas out here. But no, there's been very, very little work, if any, real work in Loxahatchee Groves. I've seen no hard data, no radium-226, 228 data or anything. I just did the Geiger counter stuff.
Just to add on, do you think that, well, what's your well depth, do you know?
Mine, I don't even know where it is. I think we built our 600 square foot addition on top of it. We bought the house and the well was there and every place was pumped once.
And one more, would you think it would be wise to, as a scientist and knowing what you know, what we've learned from this study and everything that's happened in the last 10 months, would you think it's wise that we start finding out which type of filtrations, or getting out more to the people, the type of filtrations you should have, well depth, all the things that you just said tonight? I know that it's not about brain tumors, or it may not be causing brain tumors, but how would you suggest that everybody who's had their well tested and paid $500, $800 in all their testing, wouldn't that help us in doing a geological map to be able to see a bigger area if they're certified by, what is it, certified by the state? Right. Shouldn't we be using those people's money that they've used and it won't go in vain?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, except there's one big problem with it. HIPAA, Health Information Privacy Act. That's because if this even came out with Weiss and Luxembourg when he was talking to you all, was that if they were to test it, doesn't have to be released. I read that as well. If you've got a bad site, you don't have to tell your buyer. That struck me very badly. But if anybody that has the well data and they know their depth, now DEP, I talked to Mr. Lurz, they ran into some problems with the health department or somebody on cracking the well, opening it up and plumbing it to find out if the owner didn't already know. Okay, because they wanted it completely shut down for 3 days and chlorinated and all of this after, because when you open it up, you've got the potential for contamination. even though you've got all the filtration post-well. But any of that stuff, the sharing of data is going to be one of the biggest things that we can do to, since it's already gathered, that would be one of the biggest things that we could do to start laying out what's going on out here. If people know their well depth, and they will release their latitude and longitude, not necessarily the street address. So we could do a GPS or GIS.
Kind of like they've already released, what, 28 people's water results without their name or address. And we're able to get the data that you had up here. So wouldn't it be the same thing, just to eliminate the person's address and name?
Well, latitude and longitude is going to drop you on a person's house. Even if we, we can possibly knock off 1 or 2 decimal points to say, well, maybe it's not really their house, it could be theirs, but it's still going to put it in that neighborhood. That's up to the people that own the data, which is the person, the homeowner, releasing the users of the data, whether it's me, DEP, or DOH, from HIPAA.
One more thing and then I'm done. Do you think that the droughts would maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago, would your data have come out maybe?
It doesn't hurt anybody, supposedly. But dye studies for anybody, supposedly. Dye studies for tracing is a very short distance thing. It would be something like fluorescein dye, where you can pick it up using the spectropolarimeter, where it picks up very, very small amounts of this in the water. Now, if you want to put some on, say, the surface of your land and see if you pick it up in your well, that could work. But whether you put it up on your land and see if I pick it up in my well and it's actually growth, I doubt if that's going to work at all.
We have to wrap this up.
Pastor Minnie, Maria, and Bill, and then you guys need to finish it.
Well, basically, I just wanted a clarification. I was concerned, I guess, looking at the data that you sent originally. This was 19 wells that you tested, is that correct?
Oh,
you specifically tested with 19 wells?
Yeah, mine was, that just gave me a crude feeling, and then I got the graph is from 74 wells.
74 wells, and I, just lived here all my life. The original Indian Trail Ranch is 22,000 acres. We've got probably an estimate of 12,000 to 14,000 wells out here. So we're talking less than 0.2% that you actually tested. And so it's a very small sampling. And even 74 wells is a very small sampling from that standpoint. And I think if we're really going to determine anything about water, we've got to do more samplings.
Good point.
When that filter catches the particulate and everything, and then the radiation, and when the filter catches that particulate and the radiation level increases in that water, if that water sits in that filter or at the bottom of the well for a period of time, 8 hours, overnight, when you run that water, is that water affected? Will that water be post-filtered then, or at least momentarily, potentially have more radiation in it than it might otherwise?
That's good. To answer that, I really can't answer that because.
Well, the reason why I ask is because
certain things are going to undergo the laws of diffusion. Some things will come out as it sits there, as opposed to passing by. Will it concentrate? Now, if it sits there for a long time and it breaks down to something that's more soluble, then you turn it on, you may get a spike. Okay, as opposed to it being there, breaking down continuously and bleeding off slowly. But
so if I understand, so if you go in the morning and you hit the shower right away and it's cold water, you may get a spike, where if it's hot water, it's going to sit in the hot water heater longer.
There's also trouble with hot water too, because hot water tends to outgas things better. So, get your water tested. Really, the cheapest one is Total Alpha. The best thing you can do is maintain your water system, because when we had elevated readings, the homeowners said, I haven't done anything on that in a year and a half.
Bill, we're going to get an expert in the water systems. We can certainly address that.
happening.
Mike, last one, Mike, real quick.
I had just heard recently a presentation on radium and radon and all that out here. And one of the things was that the presentation, this is my understanding, that you would need, I know you had some slightly elevated levels of radon that you're picking up on, but my understanding is that you would need magnitude of order levels higher than what you're finding in order and for sustained years for it to have an effect on cancers of various types. And mainly those would be, of course, bone cancer would be showing up in lung cancers, which I don't believe we're seeing. So I know that you're not opining on that subject, but I just did want to bring that up and to see if just from your standpoint, I was anywhere close on that issue.
Yeah, true. Well, when you look at how much radon has to be in water for it to be in the air, most of that is data that's based solely on what's called Henry's law. And that's how much is in the water at 25 degrees centigrade, 1 atmosphere of pressure, to get X amount in the air. When you heat that water up, when you put a pot on the stove to boil water, and you get it up to, I forget what it is in Fahrenheit, when you get water boils at 100 centigrade, when you get up to around 80 centigrade, you get a bunch of little bubbles. That's not boiling, that's outgassing. That's the gases out of the water coming out. Same thing happens with radon. Radon's a gas. It's going to come out of the water, so you can get a spike that way. However, you said there's no bone cancers. I saw a list where there's at least 3 that I know of that were out here in bone, and a couple of lungs. So, are those 3 bone cancers related to this radium?
We need to move on. We got to get to the full part. Bill, thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions? If the group or community has any other questions, we can certainly compile them and get them to Bill, or you can contact Bill directly. Let's move on to the next speaker. We have Dr. David Krause in the house, who is a toxicologist from the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. He is going to talk about the phase 2 water test results that were just posted recently. There is a report out there with all the data. It's a quite lengthy report. So without further ado, Dr. Krause, you guys come on up.
I'm not David Krause. I'm not even a David Krause lookalike. David Krause is to my right here. My name is Jack Long.
In the microphone.
My name is Jack Long. In the microphone. I am the director of the Southeast District of the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. The Southeast District office is located in West Palm Beach, and we have regulatory authority for environmental affairs in the 6 southeast counties of Florida, and then going west from St. Lucie County over into Okeechobee County. The purpose of the DEP's water and soil sampling initiative, which occurred at different times during the period beginning in August of last year and continuing through April of this year, was to identify possible contaminants in the water and/or soil which might be linked to the cancer cluster that has been identified by the Department of Health. Keep in mind, the Department of Health is one agency with specific responsibilities. The Department of Environmental Protection is a separate agency with our own specific jurisdictional responsibilities. So the purpose of tonight's presentation is to give you an opportunity to hear about the results of the tests of the water samples which were taken by the DEP, and to give you a chance to ask DEP personnel questions about our sampling initiatives. And we also have staff here from the Department of Health, and they're here to answer your health-related questions, which are related to the water sampling test, which the Department of Environmental Protection did. What?
really speak to the group and maybe come up to the corner and share a microphone. That's really good. Because you're not coming across clear, if you can.
Want me to try? Is this any better?
That's better.
All right. So I'd like to introduce you to the persons, some of the persons who are here with us tonight. We have Dr. Dave Krause, right here, and David is the state toxicologist for the Florida Department of Health. And his responsibility is to lead the department's efforts to evaluate environmental health risks to Floridians. We also have Mr. John O'Malley here. John, would you stand up for a minute? Thank you. John is a licensed professional geologist, and he's also a registered environmental health professional. He is the director of Environmental Public Health Division at the Palm Beach County Department of Health. And then we have our own Mr. Jeff Newman. Jeff is a member of the Department of Environmental Protection's Sites Investigation Section. Mr. Newton has over 17 years of experience in finding and tracking down sources of water and soil contamination. He was personally involved in the water and soil sampling initiatives, which I mentioned just a few moments ago. These are the initiatives that occurred starting in August of last year and continuing through April of this year. And finally, we have Mr. Joe Lords of the Southeast District Office of the Department of Environmental Protection. Mr. Lords is the administrator of our waste management program, and he has been actively involved in the water and soil sampling initiatives which have taken place in the Acreage. I believe that a number of you either know or have spoken with Mr. Lords. So, having said these things, I'm going to ask Jeff Newton, who is a member of the our headquarters Sites Investigation Section, to talk to you briefly about our sampling initiatives. And then you'll have an opportunity to ask questions of Jeff or Joe Lords related to how we did our sampling and how we did our test. And then you have the folks here from the Department of Health who can address your health-related questions relative to the sampling, relative to the test of the samples that we took. So with that, Jeff, I'll hand the microphone to you.
Dr. Long, do you mind addressing the focus group? Because the focus group is the one that's going to have questions for you.
Okay.
And if there's any resident has any additional questions, there are comment cards on that little desk by the front door that you can submit in. But if you would just reach out over here.
Okay, I think I'm finished, so I'm going to give it to Jeff.